Yahweh Elohim, Abraham and Moses, in relation to the children of Israel. As the time drew near for Yahweh Elohim to make the necessary preparations to deliver the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, according to the promise he as El Shaddai, or the Almighty Provider, had made to Abraham and his seed, or Isaac and Jacob, Yahweh Elohim raised up Moses to deliver the children of Israel, who were the posterity of Jacob, from the Egyptian bondage. Moses, born in Egypt of his parents Amram and Jochebed in 1570, by at which time Pharaoh, the Egyptian king, had instructed the midwives Shiphrah and Puah to destroy all the male children of the Hebrews, because they were multiplying faster than the Egyptians. Exodus 1:15-16. Moses' mother Jochebed hid and nursed him in her own house for 3 months. Realizing she could hide him no longer, made an ark and put him in it and placed it in the bulrushes of the river Nile, while Moses' sister Miriam stood in a secret place and watched the performance. When Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe herself in the river, she heard the child Moses cry, and she retrieved him from the water and decided to keep him for herself. Moses' sister Miriam approached Pharaoh's daughter and asked her if she should get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for her. She gave her consent and agreed to pay wages to the woman to nurse him. Miriam took Moses to his mother, Jochebed, and she nursed him until he was weaned, and thereafter she turned him over to Pharaoh's daughter. Exodus 2:2-10. Therefore Moses was reared up in the house of Pharaoh's daughter and was acquainted with the Egyptians' arts and customs. At the age of 40, Moses slew an Egyptian and hid him in the sand for smiting a Hebrew. After becoming aware that Pharaoh would learn what he had done, Moses fled into the land of Midian in the wilderness of Sinai and married one of the 7 daughters of Jethro, Zipporah. Her father Jethro was a priest in Midian and also owned a flock of sheep, and Moses became a shepherd. Exodus 2:11-22. After Moses the shepherd had been in the wilderness for 40 years, Yahweh first appeared in a vision in the form of Elohim as an angel. In the midst of the burning bush to him Moses with the rod in his hand. Exodus 3:2, Exodus 4:2-7. See also chart #1, page 13. As Moses approached to investigate the burning bush, Yahweh Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses!" And he said, "Here am I." And he, Yahweh Elohim, said, "Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground." Moreover he said, "I am the Elohim of thy father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob." Exodus 3:4-6 HNB. Moses, alone while still at the burning bush in the wilderness, was instructed to go back down into Egypt to speak to the Israelites and Pharaoh. Yahweh Elohim's further introduction and commission or instruction to Moses. And Elohim said unto Moses, "Aya Asher Aya, I will be what I will to be." Exodus 3:14, which is the original Hebrew text, HNB. Translated, "I am that I am" in the KJV. Yahweh Elohim demonstrated to Moses that he would be what he willed to be when he commanded Moses to cast the rod, which he had in his hand, on the ground, and it became a serpent. Moses fled, but Yahweh told him to put forth his hand and take it by the tail, and it became a rod again. Yahweh demonstrated other miracles to Moses, such as instructing him to put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, "Put thine hand into thy bosom again." And he put his hand into bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Exodus 4:2-7. And he said, "Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, Will be hath sent me unto you." And Elohim said moreover unto Moses, "Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, And the Elohim of Jacob hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Go, and gather the elders of Israel together, and say unto them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely remembered you and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. At this point Moses hesitated to go again into Egypt unto Pharaoh, who Moses supposed was the Pharaoh Ramesses I, king of Egypt. That was reigning at the time when he, Moses, slew the Egyptian and fled into Midian in the wilderness some 40 years earlier. However, Yahweh assured Moses that all the men which sought his life were dead, and that another Pharaoh, Ramesses II, the typical man of sin, or son of perdition of the 18th dynasty, 666, see Reverend 13, 18, was reigning, who did not know Moses, and therefore would not seek his life. Exodus 4:19. See also Exodus 3, L0-22, and charts on page L3, concerning the above paragraphs. Firstly, Yahweh spoke to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or in other words, the patriarchs, long before the time of Moses, but they never wrote or documented any of their communications they had with Yahweh. Neither did they know his true name. This was done verbally so, or through visions to them, as is stated in Exodus 6:3-5 HNB. Thusly, and I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob as El Shaddai, Almighty Provider, but by my name, Yahweh, was I not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them, to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I have also heard the groanings of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. See also Genesis 17:1, Genesis 35:11, Genesis 48:3. Moses, ordained and commissioned by Yahweh, left Midian with the rod of Elohim in his hand, Exodus 4:19-20. Zipporah, his wife, and their 2 sons, whom his wife circumcised along the way, to return to Egypt. Yahweh at this time had instructed Aaron, Moses' brother, to meet him in the wilderness, Exodus 4:27, and go back into Egypt with him to be his mouthpiece or spokesman, Exodus 4:14-28-31. Moses and Aaron did go back down into Egypt, as Yahweh Elohim had commissioned or instructed them, and while in Egypt, they delivered the message to the Israelites. But before Pharaoh would let them that were born in Egypt depart, the 10 devastating plagues were poured out. Simultaneously with the pouring out of the 10th and last plague, Yahweh Elohim instituted the Passover, which was April the 14th, beginning in Egypt and very early in the morning of the next day after the Stygian night of the Passover. Elohim, by the phenomenal cloud and the hand of Moses, led the 12 tribes of Israel out of the plague-stricken, devastated, chaotic land of Egypt, early in the morning of the third day, through the miraculously divided waters of the Red Sea into the wilderness, which was 1490 BY. This statement includes Elohim, the persons, date, and the immediate geographical location involved in our explanation. On the 15th day of the second month, Ziph, after Israel came out of Egypt, Yahweh established a Sabbath, when he gave them manna to be gathered 6 days and rest on the seventh day. Sabbath Exodus 16:15-26. Shortly after Moses was called into Mount Sinai the first time and was instructed of Yahweh Elohim to sanctify the people against the third day, which was June 6th thereafter, Yahweh Elohim spoke to Israel from the cloud that covered the mount, the Ten Commandment law, the first covenant or testament, at which time simultaneously the law was written on tables of stone in the mount, see Exodus 20th chapter, and also plate #2 on page 14. Thereafter, Moses wrote all of the words of Yahweh Elohim in a book which he had spoken from the mount. Moses took the blood of the sacrifices of bullocks, which he had caught in basins, and sprinkled half the blood upon the altar. Then he took the book and read it in the audience of the people, and they said, "All that Yahweh hath said will we do, and be obedient." Moses then took the other half of the blood and sprinkled it on the book and on the people, and said, "Behold the blood of the covenant, which Yahweh hath made with you concerning all these words." This was the first covenant with Israel. Exodus 24:4-8. Yahweh Elohim had already told Moses, before he had written all the words of the covenant and dedicated both the book and the people, to come up to the plateau of Mount Sinai the second time and bring Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and they should worship him afar off, but Moses alone should come near Yahweh. Exodus 24:1-2. It was there on the plateau of the cloud-covered mount that they saw in a vision Joshua, the Elohim of Israel, transfigure into the super-incorporeal form of a man, or as a great heavenly anthropomorphic being, see Exodus 24:9-10, and compare with Matthew 16:28, Matthew 17:1-13. This demonstrated revelation was made to Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel at this time and place, because he wished them to know then and thereafter that he was the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the Elohim of Israel. Their Elohim, as stated in the preceding caption, see Genesis 17:1, Genesis 3, Genesis 48, I Kings 18:36, I Chronicles 9:18. Thereafter, Moses and his minister Joshua rose up to ascend to the top of the phenomenal cloud-covered mount to receive the 2 tables of stone with the 10 commandments engraved with the finger of Elohim. But before Moses departed, he instructed Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders to tarry there where they were until he and Joshua returned from the top of the cloud-covered mount. However, when Moses and Joshua did not return according to the Israelites' expectations, they disobeyed Moses' instructions and descended from the plateau of the mount and became engaged in making and worshiping the golden calf, which operation also resulted in breaking of the commandments of Yahweh Elohim, written by Moses in the book of the covenant, and also engraved in the 2 tables of stone, which reads as follows: And Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yahweh thy Elohim, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no Elohim before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven idol, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, thy Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Exodus 21:6. Note, remember, this disobedience to Moses' command happened while Joshua and he were still in the cloud-covered mount. which subject we will return to and discuss after our further continuation and explanation of other visions Moses had while Joshua and he remained in the mount. Joshua and he remained in the mount. The vision of the threefold archetypal pattern in relation to the threefold tangible sanctuary. It was also in Mount Sinai that Moses received the vision of the threefold archetype pattern in relation to the threefold tangible sanctuary. See plate #4 on page 16. The vision of the threefold archetypal pattern is explained in this way. Elohim, the great heavenly anthropomorphic incorporeal being, instantaneously transformed himself into a threefold completely furnished intangible sanctuary so that Moses could see the total structure, with its brazen vesseled exterior furnishings and the golden vesseled interior furnishings therein, and also the interior hanging curtains and the departmental dividing veil, lavishly embellished with angelic figures. Thus, in this way, Elohim was able to show Moses the threefold intangible sanctuary and make him thoroughly understand and retain in his mind how thereafter he was to build the figurative threefold tangible sanctuary for a dwelling place for him, Elohim, among the children of Israel, Exodus 25:8, fashioned like the pattern which Moses had seen in the mount, Exodus 25:40. This was necessary since Yahweh, in his supernal nature, is threefold, namely, 1 Yahweh or the Father, 2 Elohim or the Word, and 3 Yahshua or the Holy Spirit in personification. And these three are one I, John 5:7. KJV, all in all, E Corinthians 15:28, Universal Supreme Spirit, embodiment in whom we live, move, and have our being. Acts 17:28, see also plate #5 on page 17. Therefore, the manifested transformed state of the threefold Yahweh, Elohim, or Yahshua into the intangible sanctuary or incorporeal pattern shown to Moses in the mount must be threefold or divided into 3 parts. These 3 parts are namely 1 the most holy place, 2 the holy place, and 3 the outer court. This statement by John, for there are 3 that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these 3 are 1 John 5:7 KJV, along with Paul's statement Colossians 2:9. For in him, Elohim or Yahshua, dwelleth all the fullness of the supernal nature of Yahweh in bodily form Yahshua. Proves the much debated question by Christendom who say that the supernal nature Godhead consists of 3 individual persons who agree in one. But the pattern of the tabernacle, and all things created in the universe by the pattern, proves that there are 3 manifestations of the one Spirit, Yahweh invisible, Elohim visible in visions, and Yahshua visible. These manifested threefold parts of the tabernacle, with the phenomenal cloud standing above it, are in reality one complete tabernacle herein called the incorporeal pattern of the universe, with its contents which are as follows. 1. The most holy place entrance into it is called the second veil, the Ark of the Covenant and its 2 cherubims of glory with their wings overshadowing the mercy seat, containing the 10 Commandment law written on tables of stone. A blue, purple, and scarlet-colored veil, lavishly embellished with angelic figures, divided the holy place and the most holy place. 2. The holy place. Entrance into it is called the first veil or door. A. The golden candlestick. B. The golden overlaid table of shewbread. C. The golden altar of incense. 3. The outer court. Entrance into it is called the straight gate. A. The brazen altar of sacrifice. B. The brazen laver, containing water for the priest to wash, the vessel containing the holy anointing oil. To summarize the B section under the caption of the explanation, we are referring to Yahweh the Elohim, and Yahshua the universal spirit and threefold archetype incorporeal pattern in relation to the threefold intangible sanctuary, which Moses saw in a vision while he was yet in Mount Sinai. Thereafter, he was to construct the tangible or physical sanctuary or tabernacle in the wilderness, according to the manifested description explained in the paragraph above. See Sanctuary of Tabernacle in pictorial illustrative chart. Caption: Elohim, the archetype original pattern of the universe. See chart on page 18. The vision and history of the creation of heaven and earth. See chart proving the Exodus before the Genesis, page 19, and chart #6, page 18. We have explained Exodus, the 24th chapter, from the 1st to the 15th verses. Now we shall explain the 16th verse. Moses, while still in the mount and within the midst of the cloud, was shown another vision. This time, beginning with Exodus 24:16, Elohim showed Moses a panoramic vision of the creation of heaven and earth. Elohim manifested himself to Moses in an incorporeal form as the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them is. Therefore, in this vision, Moses heard and saw within 6 solar days Elohim in the process of creation by himself, the pattern, each evening and morning or day by day, in logical sequence until he had reached the 7th day. Moses wrote in Exodus 4:16, "And the glory of Yahweh abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud." It was here at the colon, after the 6 days in the 24th chapter of Exodus and the 16th verse in the year 1490 BY, after Moses had led the children of Israel out of Egypt under the leadership of Yahweh Elohim, that Moses was called into Mount Sinai and was shown the vision of the creation of heaven and earth. As is quoted by Moses in the 1st chapter of Genesis, see chart on the Exodus before the Genesis, page 19, which says, "In the beginning of Moses' vision, Elohim created the heavens and earth." Moses saw in the vision in Genesis 1:33 HNB that on the 7th day Elohim completed his work and rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. The record of the creation in the 1st chapter is not a record of the actual creation, but an account of Moses' vision, which he had in Mount Sinai in the year 1490 BBY, or 2,513 years AM, after the first man Adam. The fact that Moses was called into Mount Sinai in the year 1490 BY and saw in a vision the creation of heaven and earth, which he recorded in the 1st chapter of Genesis, and confirmed by the threefold pattern of the tabernacle, proves that the long-sought mystery by scientists, theologians, and commentators of the record of the creation was not of Babylonian or Assyrian origin of mythology, but was by a vision shown to Moses in Mount Sinai in 1490 BY. If you will also note that Moses wrote in the 1st verse of the 2nd chapter of Genesis HNB, or the 4th verse of the 2nd chapter of Genesis KJV, quoted thusly, "These are the origins of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day, singular, of Yahweh, the source and substance, in the realm of eternity, not in time. That Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens, having no beginning or ending." See chart, the Exodus before the Genesis, page 19. This vision of Moses, which he saw as related in the 24th chapter of Exodus in the year 1490 BY, and recorded in the 1st and 2nd chapters of Genesis, is the answer to the long-sought mystery by scientists and theologians as to how old and from what substance the universe was created. The visions and descent of Moses from the mount and the breaking of the first 2 tables of stone. During the first 40 days that Moses, along with his minister Joshua, were in the mount, Moses, was shown all of the visions, namely: 1. The creation of heaven and earth within 6 days. Exodus 24:16, Genesis 1:1-31, Genesis 2:4, KJV, Genesis 1:1-34, Genesis 2:1 HNB by himself of the pattern, and all that in them is, which includes Adam and Eve at peace or resting in the Garden of Eden, with the command, "Thou shalt not touch or eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." See chart on page 18. 2. The book which Yahweh had written and kept, with all the names of mankind in which Moses saw his own name, X. 32, 32-33, Reverend 12-15. 3. The threefold intangible tabernacle with instructions as to how he Moses thereafter was to build the tangible tabernacle in the wilderness. Thereafter, he was to receive the first 2 tables of stone written with the finger of Elohim and place them in the ark of the covenant. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. Exodus 32:7. After Moses received the first 2 tables of stone, Joshua told Moses that he heard a noise in the camp, and for Moses to go down from the mount. Exodus 32:17. As we have already stated, Moses did not see the transgression in the Garden of Eden before he and Joshua departed from the top of the cloud-covered mount with the first 2 tables of stone in his hands. Arriving at the plateau of the mount, which was in seeing distance of the camp, where he, Moses, had instructed Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders to remain or tarry until he and Joshua returned. He discovered that they had disobeyed his command and returned to the camp and had built and was engaged in worshiping the golden calf. Moses, seeing they, the stiff-necked children of Israel, had also disobeyed the book of the covenant which Moses sprinkled with the blood of the sacrifices, and also the command, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven idol, or any likeness of anything. He, Moses, justifiably waxed hot and threw down and broke the tables of stone containing the 10 Commandment law from the plateau of the mount. These first 2 tables of stone were to have been reserved and placed in the Ark of the Covenant, which at this time had not yet been built. Exodus 5:21, Exodus 6:34, Exodus 4, Hebrews 9. See pictures and charts on pages 14 through 18. After the angry man Moses arrived within the camp, he took the golden calf which they had made, and burned it in the fire, and ground it into powder, and strew it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. Moses then questioned his brother Aaron to learn the reason for the Israelite apostasy, that is, their departure from the mount, and their disobedience in building and worshipping the golden calf, which Aaron explained to Moses that he and Joshua did not return according to their expectations. They became impatient and refused to tarry any longer. Therefore, they departed from the mount and demanded that Aaron allow them to collect the gold from one another, build and worship the golden calf. Moses told the Israelites that they had sinned a great sin. After receiving instructions from Elohim, Moses then told the Levites to arm themselves and go through all the gates of the camp and find out who was on Yahweh's side, which they did, and they slew about 3,000 of them that day. Exodus 32:27-28, Jude 5. After this, Moses consecrated the rest of the people and returned unto Yahweh to make atonement or intercession for their sins. He, Moses, said, Yet now if thou wilt forgive their sin, if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of the book which thou hast written. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Exodus 32:32-33. Moses' third trip into the mount. Yahweh said unto Moses, Hew thee out 2 tables of stone like unto the first, and bring them up into the mount, and I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which thou breakest. Moses did all that Yahweh Elohim had commanded before he ascended Mount Sinai with the second tables of stone. Exodus 34:4. While Moses was in the cloud-covered mount this time, Yahweh Elohim, in a vision, which was repeated in part, returned Moses' attention back to Adam and Eve in perfect peace within the Garden of Eden, wherein also was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which they were forbidden to eat thereof. This is where Moses left them at the end of his second trip. See chart on page 21. Note, some theologians think this second reference to Adam and Eve. beginning in the second chapter of Genesis, establishes a second account of the creation. But this is not true. It was here at this time that Moses saw the serpent that deceived and caused the transgression of Eve and the sin and instantaneous death of Adam in his conscience in the Garden of Eden. Thereafter, in the cool of that same day, or as the sun went down, Moses saw the angel with the flaming sword drive Adam, the earthly son of Yahweh Elohim, out of the garden, and the woman Eve voluntarily went out with him. Thereafter, Moses saw in the vision the birth of all the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, and the rest of the generations of mankind that followed, which included the patriarchs, and the historical events that he recorded in the book of Genesis, and a part of that which is recorded in the book of Exodus. In order to express the same thought in a better understandable way, let us say here that Yahweh Elohim brought Moses up to date while he was in the mount. Moses, at the end of his 40-day period, descended from the mount this third and last time with the second tables of stone, with the commandments of Yahweh Elohim written thereon, which signified the new covenant with Israel. Exodus 34:29. He then directed the construction and dedication of the tabernacle and the priesthood and their operation therein. He remained alive and saw the Israelites multiply 100-fold during the 40 years they were in the wilderness, while all the rest of the Israelites that were born in Egypt died except Caleb, Eleazar, and Phinehas. During this 40 years Moses wrote, or caused to be written, the 5 books of the law, Torah or Pentateuch, often referred to as the books of the Old Testament. Moses' last and final error was made when he smote the rock at Horeb, instead of speaking to it as Yahweh Elohim had told him to do, so that the Israelites could have water to drink and for other purposes. Numbers 2008-11. Yahweh Elohim then told Moses to write the Song of Victory, place Joshua in command of Israel, which he did, and then he would be permitted to go up into Mount Nebo and view the Promised Land. He died there at the age of 120 years. Yahweh buried him there. Deuteronomy chapters 31-34. Joshua and the Israelites mourned Moses' death 30 days, and Joshua gave them 3 more days to prepare victuals. And then they crossed over the divided waters of the river Jordan and invaded the land of Canaan. In a course of time, when they had conquered their enemies and reached Mount Zion, Joshua, Caleb, Eleazar, and Phinehas divided the land of Canaan among the Israelites. They left 8 tribes or nations remain therein. Joshua died a natural death at the age of 110 years in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-serah, in Mount Ephraim, Joshua 24:29-30.